Nobody saw this coming. A show loved by millions. A partnership that felt unbreakable. And then one day, it was gone. Ed China walked out. Fans went into meltdown. And Mike Brewer? He stayed quiet for a long time. Too quiet. But now he is talking. And what he is revealing about Wheeler Dealers, the show, the split, and the secrets behind the camera is something nobody fully prepared for. Let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand what went wrong, you first have to understand just how special this thing was. Wheeler Dealers launched in 2003 on Discovery Channel UK. And honestly? Nobody expected it to be anything. It was a simple idea. Mike Brewer finds a beat-up car. Ed China fixes it. They sell it for a profit. That was it. No drama. No staged arguments. No fake countdown clocks. Just two guys, a garage, and a genuine love for cars. But something magical happened. People connected with it in a way that surprised even the people making it. According to Discovery's own broadcast figures, Wheeler Dealers grew from a niche motoring show into one of the most watched automotive programs on the planet. It was airing in over 100 countries at its peak. Think about that for a second. A British bloke in a flat cap and a tall mechanic with wild hair, watched by millions of people from America to Australia to Japan. Why did it work so well? Because it was real. At a time when reality TV was becoming more staged and more fake by the year, Wheeler Dealers felt like a breath of fresh air. Ed China was not just pretending to fix cars. He actually knew what he was doing. His repairs were legitimate. His explanations were clear. Fans who knew nothing about engines started learning. Fans who already knew everything still tuned in because Ed made it look like art. And Mike? He was the everyman. The guy who got excited about a rusty old car and somehow made you feel that excitement too. He had the patter. The charm. The ability to walk into a seller's driveway and make the whole thing feel like an adventure. Together they had chemistry that you simply cannot manufacture. By the mid-2000s, Wheeler Dealers was not just a TV show. It was a community. Forums were buzzing. YouTube clips were being shared before sharing clips was even a normal thing. A generation of young car enthusiasts grew up watching Mike and Ed every single week. But here is where it gets interesting. Behind all that success, behind the smiles and the handshakes and the satisfied customers driving away in freshly restored classics, something was quietly building. A tension. A frustration. Something that neither man was talking about publicly. Not yet. Before I go further, I need to ask you something. Were you a Wheeler Dealers fan growing up? And when Ed China left, did you blame Mike Brewer? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I genuinely read every single one. Here is something most casual fans never knew. By the time Wheeler Dealers had become a global success, the production setup had already started to change in ways that the audience at home could not see. And those changes were not small. They were fundamental. They were the kind of changes that quietly reshape everything about how a show feels and how it feels to be the person making it. For the first several series, the format was straightforward. Mike would find a car. Ed would spend real time fixing it. And that time, those genuine hours in the garage working through real mechanical problems, was what gave the show its soul. Ed China was not performing. He was working. And viewers felt that difference even if they could not explain it. But as the show grew bigger, the pressure from the production side grew with it. Bigger budgets meant bigger expectations. More episodes per series meant tighter schedules. And tighter schedules meant less time in the garage. According to multiple interviews Ed China gave after his departure, the amount of mechanical content, the actual hands-on repair work that made the show what it was being reduced. Not by a little. By a significant amount. Ed stated publicly that what used to be hours of genuine workshop footage was being cut down to make room for other elements. Faster edits. More lifestyle content. A slicker, more commercial product. And here is where the story takes a dark turn. Because Ed was not just a presenter who liked fixing cars. He was an engineer. A real one. He studied mechanical engineering. He built a motorized sofa that became famous in its own right. For him, the workshop sequences were not just TV segments. They were the entire point. So when those sequences started shrinking, it was not just a creative disagreement. For Ed China, it felt like the heart was being cut out of something he genuinely loved. But wait. It gets worse. Because this tension was not happening in a vacuum. It was happening at the same time as another massive shift, one that would push everything to breaking point. The production company behind Wheeler Dealers, Velocity, had decided to move the show's base of operations from the UK to the United States. The garage that fans had come to love, the familiar British setting, the whole atmosphere of the original show, all of it was being left behind. And the team was being asked to rebuild it all from scratch on the other side of the world. Think about that for a second. You have spent years building something. You have poured your expertise, your personality, your genuine passion into every single episode. And then the people controlling the money decide to pick it all up and move it somewhere else entirely and reduce the very thing that made it special in the process. Most people would struggle with that. Ed China did more than struggle. He made a decision that shocked the entire motoring world. Wait. Before I tell you what happened next, because this next part is something 99% of people never heard, make sure you are subscribed. This channel covers the stories mainstream media is too scared to touch. Hit subscribe. I will wait. March 2017. That is the date that Wheeler Dealers fans will never forget. Ed China posted a video on YouTube. No warning. No press release. No carefully managed announcement from a PR team. Just Ed, sitting in front of a camera, talking directly to the people who had watched him for 14 years. And what he said in that video sent shockwaves through the entire motoring community overnight. He was leaving Wheeler Dealers. Immediately. And he was not leaving quietly. In the video, which racked up millions of views within days of being posted, Ed explained his reasons clearly and calmly. He said the show had changed. He said the mechanical content, the actual repair work that he and millions of fans considered the backbone of the entire program, had been cut down dramatically. He said that what used to be comprehensive, detailed, educational workshop sequences had been reduced to short fragments. Stripped back. Simplified. And he said that he had raised these concerns internally, repeatedly, and that nothing had changed. According to reporting from Autocar magazine at the time, Ed's departure was described by industry insiders as one of the most significant shakeups in automotive television history. That is not an exaggeration. Wheeler Dealers was not just a popular show. It was a format that had been copied, referenced, and admired across the industry for over a decade. And its most recognizable technical voice had just walked away from it in the most public way possible. The internet did not take it well. Social media erupted. Forums that had been quietly ticking over for years suddenly came alive with anger, sadness, and in some corners accusation. And a lot of that accusation was pointed directly at Mike Brewer. Fans who felt betrayed by the changes needed somewhere to put that feeling. And Mike, as the face still attached to the show, became the target. Comment sections filled up with people calling him out. Saying he had let it happen. Saying he had chosen the money over the integrity of what they had built together. But here's what most people missed in all that noise. Mike Brewer did not fire back. He did not go on social media and start a war of words. He did not give a string of interviews tearing Ed's version of events apart. He stayed measured. He stayed calm. And he kept making the show. That choice to stay quiet and keep working was either the most professional response possible or the most calculated one. Depending on who you ask, people see it very differently. What the public did not know at the time was what was happening behind the scenes between Mike and the production company. What conversations were being had. What pressures Mike himself was under. what he actually thought about the changes that had driven Ed out the door. Because Mike Brewer had his own feelings about all of it. Feelings he was not ready to share. Not then. But the truth had a way of finding its way to the surface eventually. And when Mike finally started talking openly, really talking, what he revealed was not what most people expected to hear. Let's talk about the move to America. Because this is the part of the Wheeler Dealer story that does not get discussed enough. And honestly, it is the part that explains almost everything that came after. The decision to relocate production from the UK to a garage in Burbank, California was not made by Mike Brewer. It was not made by Ed China. It was made by the people holding the purse strings. The executives. The network. And both presenters were essentially told that this was happening whether they liked it or not. Now on paper the move made sense from a business perspective. Velocity, the American cable network that had acquired Wheeler Dealers, wanted the show to feel more relevant to its core American audience. The US market was enormous. The advertising revenue was significant. And having the show based in California meant easier access to a wider variety of cars, a bigger production infrastructure, and a warmer climate that made filming more practical year-round. From a purely commercial standpoint you can follow the logic. But television is not purely commercial. At least not the kind of television that builds a loyal audience over 14 years. Wheeler Dealers had a texture. A feeling. The slightly damp British garage. The cups of tea. The understated humor. The sense that you were watching two genuinely passionate people doing something they loved in a completely unspectacular setting. That texture was not a production detail. It was the entire atmosphere of the show. And when you picked it up and dropped it into a gleaming California workshop, something invisible but essential did not make the journey with it. Fans noticed immediately. According to viewer response threads tracked by outlets including TV Zone and various automotive fan communities, the reaction to the American series was sharply divided. Long-term fans felt the show had lost something they could not quite name but absolutely felt. Newer viewers who had come to Wheeler Dealers through the American episodes did not understand what the fuss was about. And that divide between the old audience and the new direction put Mike Brewer in an almost impossible position. Because Mike had a choice to make. And it was not a simple one. He could walk away like Ed did and preserve his reputation with the original fanbase. Or he could stay, adapt, and try to keep the show alive in whatever form it was allowed to take. Mike chose to stay. And that choice cost him socially in a way that he has spoken about with real honesty in more recent interviews. He lost fans. He lost goodwill he had spent years building. People who had loved him for over a decade suddenly viewed him with suspicion. And he had to get up every morning and keep making the show anyway. What makes this even more complicated is that Mike has since admitted the transition period was genuinely difficult for him personally. In an interview with Drive Tribe, Mike described the early American series as a challenging time where he was finding his feet in a completely new environment while simultaneously dealing with the public fallout from Ed's departure. He was not just doing a new job in a new country. He was doing it while half his audience was actively hoping he would fail. That is a pressure that most people would crack under. And the fact that he did not crack, that he kept showing up and kept delivering, says something real about the man regardless of where you stand on the decisions that were made. But here is where it gets darker. Because the American experiment did not just test Mike's resilience. It tested the very identity of Wheeler Dealers as a brand. And there was a moment, a specific period during those early California series where people inside the production were genuinely uncertain whether the show would survive at all. Here is the part that changes everything. Because for years, through all the online criticism, through all the forum arguments, through all the YouTube comment sections filled with people taking sides, Mike Brewer kept a lid on what he truly thought. He gave interviews. He answered questions. But there was always a careful distance between what he said publicly and what he actually felt privately. That distance started closing recently. And what came out when it did was more honest, more raw, and more surprising than most people were prepared for. In a series of candid interviews and social media appearances over the past couple of years, Mike began opening up in a way that felt genuinely different from anything he had said before. Not scripted. Not managed. Just honest. And the first thing he made clear was this: he understood why fans were angry. He did not dismiss it. He did not call people ungrateful or tell them they were wrong to feel what they felt. He acknowledged that the show changed. He acknowledged that the change was painful for a lot of people. And he acknowledged that he was part of a machine that made decisions he did not always agree with. That admission alone was significant. Because for a long time the narrative in certain corners of the internet was that Mike Brewer had happily gone along with everything. That he had prioritized his career over the integrity of the show. That he had thrown Ed China under the bus to keep his own seat at the table. Mike's recent honesty dismantled that narrative in a way that a simple denial never could have. He was not defensive. He was reflective. And that reflectiveness had the ring of truth to it. According to an in-depth conversation Mike had on the Collecting Cars podcast, he spoke about the period surrounding Ed's departure with a level of candor that surprised even the host. He described feeling caught between two worlds. On one side were the production executives and network demands pulling the show in a commercial direction. On the other side was the audience, the loyal, passionate, deeply invested audience who wanted the show to stay exactly as it had always been. And Mike was standing in the middle of that tension every single day with no clean way out. He also addressed something that had been speculated about for years but never confirmed. The question of whether he and Ed China had spoken since the split. And his answer was careful but telling. Mike indicated that the relationship had been strained in the immediate aftermath of Ed's departure. That the way things unfolded publicly made private communication difficult. But he also made clear that there was no deep personal hatred between them. No dramatic falling out behind closed doors that matched the dramatic public perception. Two people had found themselves on opposite sides of a professional disagreement that got very loud very fast. And both of them had been trying to navigate that ever since. And honestly, this part of the story hit me hard. Because how many of us have trusted a working relationship completely, believed in something you built together only to watch external pressures tear it apart before you even had a chance to fight for it? How many of us have been caught in the middle of a situation where there was no right answer and every choice came with a cost? Mike Brewer's story is not just about a car show. It is about loyalty, compromise, and what happens when the thing you love gets taken in a direction you never asked for. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by someone you fully trusted, or watched something you cared about get destroyed by people who did not understand its value? But here is what made Mike's revelations truly land. It was not just what he said about the past. It was what he said about himself. He admitted that he could have spoken up more forcefully during the transition period. That there were moments where he saw the direction things were heading and chose to stay quiet rather than risk his position. He did not dress that up as a brave decision. He called it what it was, a compromise he made under pressure. And he said that living with the consequences of that compromise, watching the fan reaction, watching the show he loved become a lightning rod for controversy, was one of the most difficult professional experiences of his life. That kind of honesty is rare. Especially from someone who had every reason to keep the official story clean and simple. So where does all of this leave us? After everything. After the split. After the American experiment. After the years of online debate and the slow drip of honest revelations from Mike Brewer himself. Where does Wheeler Dealers actually stand today, and what does the future look like for the show and the man who has carried it through all of it? The first thing to understand is that Wheeler Dealers did not die. That surprised a lot of people who predicted the show would collapse without Ed China. When Ant Anstead came in as the new co-presenter in 2017, the reaction was mixed, to put it mildly. Ant was talented. Genuinely talented. His mechanical knowledge was real and his on-screen presence was strong. But he was not Ed. And a vocal section of the fanbase made sure he knew it. Comment sections were brutal in that period. Every episode became a referendum on whether the show still deserved to exist. But something interesting happened over time. Ant Anstead started winning people over. Not everyone. But enough. His natural enthusiasm and his genuine skill in the workshop gave the show a different energy, not the same as before, but not without its own merit either. According to viewing figures reported by Motor Trend, which had taken over the Wheeler Dealers brand by that point, the show maintained a substantial and engaged audience through the Ant Anstead era. It was not the phenomenon it once was. But it was still very much alive. Then Ant Anstead left too. And the cycle of transition and fan reaction started all over again. Mike Brewer once again found himself having to defend the show, reintroduce it, and ask an audience that had been through a lot of changes to give it another chance. Each transition cost something. Each new face in the garage asked fans to invest again in a relationship they had already had broken once. And yet the show kept going. That resilience, frustrating as it has been for longtime fans, is actually a testament to something. The core format that Mike Brewer and Ed China built back in 2003 was strong enough to survive things that would have killed lesser shows outright. Today Wheeler Dealers continues to produce new content under the Motor Trend banner. Mike Brewer remains the constant. The one thread connecting the show's present to its original identity. And in recent appearances and social media posts, Mike has shown a version of himself that feels more settled than the defensive, careful public figure he sometimes appeared to be during the rockiest years. He talks about the show with pride. He talks about its history with genuine affection. And he talks about Ed China without bitterness, which given everything that played out publicly is more than a lot of people would manage. Nobody reported what happened next in the broader story, which is that Mike Brewer has quietly been rebuilding his reputation with the very fans who turned on him. Not through grand gestures or carefully managed PR campaigns. But through consistency. Through showing up. Through continuing to make content about cars with the same enthusiasm he brought to that very first episode back in 2003. Fan communities that were hostile toward him just a few years ago have softened noticeably. Long-term viewers who swore they would never watch again have found themselves tuning back in. Not because everything is perfect. But because Mike is still there, still caring, still doing the thing that made them fall in love with the show in the first place. And the question of Ed China has never fully gone away. It probably never will. Because what those two built together was genuinely special. The kind of special that leaves a mark on people. Fans still post side-by-side comparisons. Still share old clips from the early series. Still talk about their favorite Ed moments with the kind of warmth you reserve for something that genuinely shaped you. That is not nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. That is the mark of something that was truly good. Mike Brewer knows that. He has said as much. In one of his most recent and most watched interviews, posted on his own YouTube channel, which now boasts a highly engaged subscriber base of its own, Mike described the original Wheeler Dealers era as the best years of his professional life. He said that what he and Ed created together was something he is proud of every single day. And he said that whatever happens next with the show, whatever form it takes going forward, that foundation, those early series, that garage, that chemistry will always be the thing he is most grateful for. This next fact will change how you see the whole story. Because Mike Brewer did not just survive the fallout from one of the most public splits in automotive television history. He came out the other side with something arguably more valuable than before. A clearer sense of who he is. A more honest relationship with his audience. And a show that, against all the odds and all the predictions, is still standing. So that is the truth about what happened to Wheeler Dealers. Not the clean version. Not the official version. The real one. A show built on genuine passion that got caught in the machinery of commercial television and came out the other side changed but not destroyed. Two people who built something remarkable together and then had to find their own paths when the road split. And one man who stayed, absorbed the criticism, kept going, and eventually found a way to tell his side of the story with honesty and grace. Mike Brewer could have walked away a long time ago. He could have protected his reputation by distancing himself from the changes that damaged the show's standing with its most loyal fans. He did not do that. He stayed. He adapted. He kept caring. And whether you agree with every decision that was made or not, that commitment to something he loves is impossible to fake over 20+ years. Wheeler Dealers is not what it was. Nothing stays exactly what it was. But the spirit that made it matter in the first place, the love of cars, the joy of restoration, the simple pleasure of two people in a garage making something broken run again, that spirit is still there if you know where to look. But here is what I did not tell you yet. There is a part of this story, one final secret that connects directly to what really happened between Mike Brewer and the network executives when the contract negotiations got ugly behind closed doors. I am covering that in my next video. It is already uploaded. Go watch it right now. The link is on your screen.